This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. A Manitoba woman was held in jail for a month because she missed taking doses of her tuberculosis medication. The mother of three has no criminal record and was never charged with a crime, but the government decided to incarcerate her instead of placing her in a hospital. The I-Team's Caroline Bargout reports.
This is the moment Geraldine Mason has been waiting for. The 36-year-old mother of three has spent the last month in jail because she fell behind taking her tuberculosis medication. She's never been charged with a crime, and yet she was incarcerated for 32 days, surrounded by women, some convicted of violent offenses.
I was scared, obviously. I didn't just want to go around and because I never know if that person's violent or just not having a good day. I was in my room most of the time, which sucked.
Tuberculosis is a serious illness that mainly affects the lungs. It can be deadly if not treated. The disease is spread through droplets, but can be cured with consistent use of antibiotics. Mason has had it 3 times and once inadvertently infected family members. Public health officials were concerned if she went without treatment for too long, her disease would become resistant to medication.
I was talking to one of the nurses and they said, we're not trying to treat you like a criminal. I was like, but I am getting treated like a criminal.
Public health had multiple options. They could order Mason to be sent to a hospital to take her medication. They could put her in isolation elsewhere, or they could send her to jail. They chose incarceration for a woman with no criminal history. Leif Jensen is her public defender.
I think it's important just to recognize what happened here. Manitoba felt it was important for her to take a pill once a day. That's fine. They locked her in a room for 24 hours a day in order to have someone watch her take a pill for 10 seconds a day. That's what happened here. And that was wildly excessive.
Mason lives in God's Lake Narrows and came to Winnipeg for a dentist appointment. On October 27th, she was picked up by Winnipeg police on an order under the Public Health Act and taken to their downtown headquarters where she was strip-searched and placed in a holding cell. She was then transferred to the remand center and strip-searched again and placed in a cell with another inmate. When she had to go to the hospital for an x-ray, she was handcuffed and her feet were shackled. Then she was strip-searched again when she was sent back to remand. A week later, she was sent to the Women's Correctional Center and strip-searched a 4th time and eventually placed in a cell with 3 other inmates. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association says this case is alarming.
We think that there is no justifiable reason for someone to be detained in a prison for purely public health reasons.
Part of the issue is Mason has to take her medication in front of health officials. She says the pills make her nauseous. So if she has housework or something else to do, she tries to take the pills when she's done. The problem is sometimes it's past 5 p.m. and the nursing station on her First Nation is closed. Mason says she takes the pill anyway, but if health officials don't see her do it, they assume she didn't.
Her lawyer says Mason was not contagious and was never a danger. Health officials should have done more to work with her instead of throwing her in jail.
She was never in segregation. There was never any isolation. She was initially in a cell with a roommate, then she was in a cell with 3 roommates, then she was in a cell with 4 roommates and working in the kitchen.
One of the conditions of Mason's release is that a healthcare worker will FaceTime her every day at 1:30 p.m. to watch her take her meds. Why that wasn't an option before she was incarcerated is unclear.
I was in shackles and handcuffs.
Mason was supposed to be released January 27th, which means she would have had to spend the holidays away from her children and her grandson. But she was released after CBC News requested to interview her in jail. She was reunited with her boyfriend and can't wait to see her kids.
I'm super excited. I can't even wait to get home.
In the month she spent in jail, Mason missed her son's 13th birthday and her grandson's first Halloween. She's so grateful this Christmas she'll get to spend it at home with her family.
Now, this story drew reaction from the government today. CBC's Caroline Bargut joins us now in the newsroom. And Caroline, what did the Premier have to say about all of this?
Well, Brittany, Premier Canoe said Manitoba is not doing this again. He says paperwork will be drawn up today so that no one is ever jailed simply for having tuberculosis.
I read the story this morning. I reached out to the two most senior people in the government, and I said, get me an order ensuring that nobody is ever jailed for having tuberculosis again. I haven't had a chance to speak to him directly, but I understand that Dr. Roussin is going to sign a public health order to that effect today.
The province says that order has now been signed. The Premier said the order will say that health officials will not seek incarceration as a way to treat people who have tuberculosis. He also said if he gets a chance to speak to Geraldine Mason, he plans to apologize.
All right, thanks, Caroline. That's CBC I-Team reporter Caroline Bargut. The humanitarian search for the remains of 2 First Nations women murdered by a convicted serial killer is now officially underway at Prairie Green Landfill. It started this morning with family members and Manitoba's Premier on site. The remains of Mercedes Myron and Morgan Harris are believed to be buried there. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, the search has already turned up some promising signs.
Packaging from dairy products and flyers marked with dates from May 2022 have been uncovered at Prairie Green Landfill. This is around the time the remains of 39-year-old Morgan Harris and 26-year-old Mercedes Myron ended up buried at the site. They are among 4 Indigenous women murdered by convicted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky.
When we work together, we can move mountains. And today, we began stage 4 of the search of the Prairie Green Landfill.
At 10:01 Monday morning, 2 years after families found out their loved ones were in the landfill, the first load of material from a targeted search zone was hauled to a search facility at the site. It's being spread out and picked through by teams of searchers using rakes and their hands.
We are going to be able to identify items and potentially remains as we find them.
A day earlier, Premier Canoe was part of a ceremony with the Harris and Myron families, and he was there again as the search got underway.
And it is an intense emotion that you feel standing on that site with those families.
Officials say the search is grueling work. 45 people, including relatives, community members, students, and anthropologists, make up 3 separate teams. Searchers wear personal protective equipment, and they switch off every hour, decontaminating each time. To start, they're searching 1 truckload per hour, with plans to ramp up to 2 as they become more efficient.
This stage is anticipated to continue till spring of 2025, and it includes searching through approximately 20,000 cubic meters of waste in hopes of finding the remains of Morgan and Mercedes.
If the women's remains aren't found, searchers may dig deeper or search the more than 18,000 tons of waste that's already been removed from above the targeted zone.
We can say with confidence that we have a chance for this search to succeed. So no matter what lies ahead, we can say that we tried and we made the effort for these families, which is very significant.
Both Winnipeg Police and the previous Progressive Conservative government decided not to search. Safety concerns due in part to asbestos were among the reasons. The Premier says asbestos has been encountered, but it was removed safely. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
2 people were found dead in a home in Portage-La Prairie last night. RCMP say they were called to a home on Oak Bay around 10:30 p.m. Inside, officers found a 42-year-old man and a 37-year-old woman dead. Mounties say there's no concern for public safety at this time. Anyone with information is asked to contact RCMP or Crime Stoppers. Time to bring in weather specialist Riley Lachak. And Riley, at least for me, it's that nice time of year with just that little sprinkle of snow, but that's not the case in other parts of the province.
Yeah, some very changing weather conditions over the next 24 and 48 hours. Brittany will start with for the Flin Flon and the Pas region. There we go.
10 to 15 centimeters of snow by the time we get to the morning hours tomorrow. We have a weather advisory in place as well for northwestern Ontario. We are looking at the bulk of this system moving into northwestern Ontario. We'll see some snow into the Winnipeg region as well. So a mix of sun and clouds today, bit of snow already through parts of northern Manitoba. So we're looking at -13 with increasing clouds tonight. Our winds do pick up a little bit as we get through the evening hours, north to south, 20 gusting 40 by the morning. Periods of light snow in Winnipeg, but it's north and east of the city that we see more of that accumulating snow as we get through the overnight hours and certainly into the day on Tuesday. So for Winnipeg, I've got us in that 2 to 4 centimeter range by the time we get into the afternoon hours tomorrow. Southwest winds at 20 by the time we get to the afternoon. Things really change from there. Brittany will talk about the wind, the temperatures, and of course how much snow we can expect when I come back in a bit.
Thanks, Riley. And a reminder for everyone to stay safe out on those roads.
Yes.
A Manitoba First Nation is pushing for a policing change after a 17-year-old was killed by RCMP officers. After the break, we hear from the family. Stay with us. A remote Manitoba community is calling for change after a 17-year-old was killed by RCMP. The family of Elgin Muskego says Mounties should have tried to use other methods to subdue him. As CBC's Arturo Chang reports, members of the northern community want change.
The family of Elgin Muskego is hoping to come together soon at a wake for the teen shot by RCMP outside a home in Norway House more than a week ago. His body is expected to arrive back home Monday night. When it does, the family will light a sacred fire until after the funeral happens later this week. Community members say there's a lot of anger in the First Nation. They want to turn that frustration into a vehicle for change.
When we don't address the root issue, it'll just continue to happen. It's like we just wait for the next tragedy.
Residents rallied outside the local RCMP detachment on Thursday, calling for justice, including family members.
There's no justice for Elgin, and you'll see that right across the country. Yes. It seems like Indigenous people are the target.
Police say Muskego was holding an edged weapon and was moving toward them. Elgin's family says he'd struggled with mental health issues and drug use, and that police didn't have to kill him. It's not the first time the community has been upset at the RCMP. They held a similar rally this spring after police tasered a teen who is nonverbal and disabled. The boy's family says he could have died, like Elgin.
Something should have been done already this year. Now somebody just died from the RCMP just for a young boy.
This has to end. It's unacceptable.
The federal Indigenous Services Minister said the government is looking at giving communities more powers in policing. Norway House's chief says the solution is having a police service of their own.
A community petition is calling on all levels of government to do more, including for some of the money that goes towards RCMP to be funneled towards local initiatives instead. Manitoba's police watchdog is investigating the teen's death. Arturo Chang, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Now, that shooting happened just days before a fatal police shooting in Winnipeg, where a 24-year-old Nunavut man was killed. The incidents are prompting renewed calls to lengthen and modernize police education in Canada. One expert says we should look to Nordic countries for ways to do that. The CBC's Rosanna Hempel reports.
Elgin Muskego and Jordan Charlie were both shot and killed by police in Manitoba more than a week ago. In each case, police say they were holding an edged weapon. Alberta criminologist Temitope Oriola argues overhauling police education could be part of the solution, so fewer people die by lethal force.
Much of their training emphasizes marksmanship. In other words, people's capacity to shoot and not miss. When all you have is a hammer, somehow everything looks like a nail.
At Winnipeg Police, a person at least 18 years old with a grade 12 education can become a constable after 36 weeks of training. This includes academics and field work with firearms and use of force training. At the RCMP, recruits have to meet similar requirements. There, they do 26 weeks of basic training, plus 6 months of on-the-job training.
They are enabled by law to use force, including lethal force. Is this a reasonable timeline to train people who are imbued with power, firepower, that is second only to the armed forces?
Oriola argues it isn't. He points to Nordic countries such as Norway as having good models of police education. The inquiry into the 2020 mass shooting in Nova Scotia also called for an overhaul of police training. It suggested police forces look to Finland, saying the approach has achieved remarkable success in public trust and capacity to avoid the use of lethal force. CBC News asked the Norwegian Police University College about its 3-year bachelor's degree. Students there learn about ethics, law, and psychology, including how to recognize and respond to people experiencing drug addictions and mental health issues.
Having this strong focus on de-escalation, that the police, their role in a conflict situation is to de-escalate the situation.
The second year is mostly field training. That's when they're first exposed to firearms. Rune Glomseth is an associate professor at the school. He says communication is a primary focus in the program.
The main thing in the Norwegian police is what we call the power pyramid, and that is that we are going to use as less power as possible in every situation that we meet, and communication is a central part of it.
RCMP declined an interview with CBC. Winnipeg Police did not comment, but the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police says it is looking at ways to increase public trust in police and see fewer police-involved deaths. It hopes to achieve that partly through sharing best practices in de-escalation and use of force. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Riley's back now. And Riley, it feels like it's like this day's brought to you by the letter S.
Yes.
We could do a little of that Sesame Street here. Snow, lots of it.
Snow, lots of it, lots of wind coming, and some very wild swings in our temperatures. Brittany, we'll get right into it. There's lots to talk about. So I was mentioning the snowfall warning in place for the Paw, Flin Flon, Grand Rapids. That's where we've already started to see the beginnings of this area of low pressure from Alberta start to move in. Will continue as we get into the overnight period tonight. So we start to see clouds building in as we get through into the evening, into the overnight period. Mainly cloudy as we get to the start of the day on Tuesday. And again, the main brunt of this snow begins to move into central Manitoba and into the Interlake. Here in Winnipeg, we're on the edge of this, more like 2 to 4 centimeters of snow, periods of snow through the day tomorrow, but definitely into northwestern Ontario, we are looking at some pretty heavy accumulation as we get through the next 24 hours or so. This is going to mean any travel east of the city into northwestern Ontario, likely quite treacherous as we get into the later part of Tuesday and into Wednesday, and certainly up that Highway 6 corridor as we get through the rest of Tuesday. So as we get through the rest of Tuesday, this warm front comes through, and with this brings a chance of some freezing rain, particularly through the Swan River Dauphin region. We'll see temperatures pretty close to freezing by the time we get to the afternoon hours tomorrow. That brings with it a few more on and off snow showers for Winnipeg, so periods of snow as we get through the rest of the day Tuesday. Then we get stuck in between this, so this warm front here will really drive our temperatures up as we get into the evening. So an afternoon temperature in Winnipeg tomorrow of around -6 degrees. By the time we get to 9-10 p.m., we'll be at about -3, even -2 by the late evening, with a chance we could see a few more showers and even temperatures close to zero along the international border. And this will mean we could even see a chance of some showers as we get through the later evening Tuesday. Behind that, some very windy conditions. This cold front sweeps through by early Wednesday, this bringing with it very drastically falling temperatures. So I was mentioning -2, -3 degrees by the time we get to the late evening Tuesday. By first thing Wednesday morning, temperatures in Winnipeg falling to about -14. Combined with that, northwesterly winds 50 gusting to 70 through parts of the Red River Valley. This will mean some very hazardous driving conditions, blowing snow, and the potential even for a little bit of lake effect snow along the lee of Lake Winnipeg. So 2 to 4 centimeters for Winnipeg, 10 to 15 into northwestern Ontario, up through the northern part of the Interlake and into parts of northern Manitoba, 2 to 5 more like for the Parkland region. So we do get a little bit of sun back as we get into Wednesday, but very windy conditions hanging around. Temperature doesn't really go anywhere aside from about -14. And we're looking at the sunshine even sticking around as we get into the later part of the week. More to come after the break.
A Winnipeg program that helps newcomers improve their English skills is on the verge of closing down. The federal government has pulled all its funding. For more, we're joined by the CBC's Ian Fraze. And Ian, the PCs brought this up in the provincial legislature today. So what's happening?
Well, according to the school, they say the feds are going to give their money instead to other programs that help newcomers with little or no English experience. The school we're talking about, at risk of losing their funding, is called Enhanced English Skills for Employment. They teach around 1,000 students a year. These are skilled workers who need to upgrade their English in order to get jobs in their field. For example, the doctor who can't get work because their English isn't good enough. Now the feds are taking away their funding, and Louise Giesbrecht says her school may have to close.
They're going to languish in lower level jobs. We haven't paid for their education. Somebody else did. So here we have this gift of people who are highly educated in skills that we need, but we're not giving them an opportunity, or we are letting them languish.
Giesbrecht says the province offers grants for settlement groups like this, but it's not enough to keep her school running. We're waiting on the feds to respond to our request for comment.
So meanwhile, the PCs are calling for an emergency debate in the legislature. This is about the possibility of the U.S. leveling new tariffs on Canada. So Ian, what were the Tories hoping the debate would accomplish?
Well, they hoped it would get them on the path to creating a Manitoba plan for the economy in case Canada gets hit by these tariffs. The PCs wanted a debate and an all-party committee established to create this strategy, but the NDP said no. That left PC finance critic Lauren Stone disappointed.
We believe that this is a nonpartisan issue here in Manitoba. We need a Team Canada effort, but we also need a Team Manitoba effort. This is going to impact tens of thousands of jobs in Manitoba. It's going to increase our inflation, increase costs of living, and also weaken our Canadian dollar.
Earlier in the day, Premier Wab Kinew said he was happy as the Prime Minister flew down last week to have dinner with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump.
You'll know that our U.S. trade advisor is fond of saying relate before you negotiate. And so I think sitting down to break bread is a good idea.
Kinew was speaking right off the top there about Gary Dewar. The former premier is Kinew's advisor on Canada-U.S. trade. Brittany.
All right, thank you, Ian. That's CBC's Ian Fraze.
This house is one of 4 structures in the William White neighbourhood that burned over the weekend. Vacant and derelict buildings have been an ongoing problem in this neighbourhood, and the City of Winnipeg has created a new team which it hopes will speed up responses to buildings and conditions like this. Daryl Warren from the William White Neighbourhood Association has tracked fires in the area for years. He says it's taking a toll on the community.
A lot of people, I think, are looking at vacating the area because they want to go to safer places.
The same weekend this house on Burroughs burned, firefighters were called to this garage at the corner of Magnus and Salter. Same as this garage on Aberdeen Avenue. And over on Powers, this house burned for the 3rd time in recent months. Properties like these will be the focus of a new team dedicated to responding to buildings in unsafe conditions. Chief Enforcement Officer Kelly Happychuck says they already have their work cut out for them.
Well, we've started this program 3 weeks ago, and we have 75 files that are open right now. So it's busy.
The city has tried to toughen enforcement on vacant and derelict buildings, introducing stricter requirements for securing doors and windows and leveling new fines. But Property and Development Chair Sherry Rowland says the number of vacant and derelict properties is still too high.
We have over 700, not all the same buildings, but unfortunately we still have a bit of a churn that indicates that we're not reducing the numbers.
Normally, it would take inspectors up to 20 business days to respond to a complaint. Now the city hopes the team can do it in 2 days. Warren hopes to see fewer fires and more opportunities for affordable housing.
This house probably could have been refurbished and turned into a family home. And now it might be questionable on what can happen here now.
There's no set end date for the team. A report on their progress is expected in April. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Winnipeg Jets' longest road trip of the season is over.
Send it over to Fleury. He settles up. Puck shot. Score! Tipped in front, and Lowry has opened the scoring. It's 1-0 Jets.
Adam Lowry in the first period on TSN, but one goal wouldn't cut it as the Jets fall 3-1 to the Dallas Stars. Head coach Scott Arniel says this road trip took its toll.
We got to get home. We got to get home and kind of get in our own beds, kind of hope to refresh, get our minds back to where they need to be for Tuesday night against another divisional opponent.
That opponent, the St. Louis Blues, in town tomorrow night. She went to 7 different schools and dropped out of all of them. She struggled with mental health challenges and had trauma. Heaven Lee Martin says school just wasn't sticking as she struggled with those challenges until she started at RRC Polytech. She spoke with Marcy Marcusa about what she faced.
I feel like a lot of other Indigenous youth and people, like just Indigenous people in general, will kind of understand how hard it is to exist in this type of society with intergenerational trauma and everything that we carry with us from, our past and our present. And as a kid, you don't really understand what's going on, and you're confused and you're just really lost, and no one around you is able to kind of guide you because they're in the same situation. And so I just felt really lost. I didn't have a sense of identity. I didn't really know where I belonged. I didn't have any community, and that really creates that sense of loneliness. And then when you're mentally ill on top of that, it's a struggle because you feel like you're crazy, in the nicest way. It's really lonesome.
And when you were just a teenager, you shared with me, so I'm just, for the sake of the listeners here, we had a longer talk about this, but you lost a friend, you lost a family member at a young age, you were a caregiver, you had to be almost older beyond your years to care for others, and a lot of pressures. Yeah, and it's hard, like I said, because a lot of Indigenous people also kind of fall into that role as a caregiver when they're really young, because my grandparents, they raised me and they adopted me, and I'm extremely grateful for everything that they did for me, but their health really, like you said, made me grow up fast, and I kind of lost out a lot of, from my childhood, and that contributed to the mental health struggle and feeling alone, because I would see all these people, having fun and being kids, and I wouldn't be able to have that experience because I had to go home and be a caretaker. Let's talk about what works about RRC here, because you said, quote, "It helped heal some of the trauma I had with the education system." You volunteer as part of the resource crew of student volunteers here on campus at the Indigenous Support Center. How has the center helped you here at Red River?
It's helped me so much. I've only, my first term is only finishing in about 2 weeks, and it's incredible just the amount of, improvement that I've made, that not only everyone around me notices but I notice within myself, because even though I am doing a lot better, I still struggle with my anxiety, that insecurity, feeling behind because I don't have my diploma and all that stuff. So coming here and meeting all these people who are in the similar situations, who understand what I'm going through, really helped. And now I have that community that I didn't have growing up, and they have wonderful elders and knowledge keepers, and Paul and Richard and Grandma Janice, and I'm just so thankful for them and all the other staff that they have, because they really go the extra mile to make sure that we succeed and we stay in school. And having that support is honestly life-changing, as someone who never experienced support like that.
When you dropped out to school, you think back to that time and initially went to work in the, at the casino. Did you ever imagine you'd be sitting here this morning, talking about all this?
No, not at all. It's because I had really bad social anxiety, to the point where part of the reason why I dropped out was because I just couldn't bring myself to stand in front of the class and present. And so, here I am, talking, using that experience to kind of advocate and raise awareness to the struggles that Indigenous youth face. And I would never picture myself graduating or being an advocate or doing any of this, and it blows my mind every opportunity that I get. I'm just so grateful to do this work that I do.
Your future work, you want to give back to Broken Head specifically in a really specific way, right? So what's your thinking?
yes, I grew up in the North End, but I also grew up in the reserve for like my teenage years, and I experienced like almost a total lack of like stuff to do. You know, we had one play structure that was locked after school hours. You know, they didn't really have any other like sports programs or anything else for people who weren't interested in sports. And so I was just kind of at home, like on my computer the whole time, and it was, like I said, a really lonely experience. And once I started getting out and doing more land-based and cultural, that's where I started getting out of my shell and finding out who I was and feeling so much better. And I want to work on like getting project management and governance and all this stuff so I can start organizing and implementing programs for the youth in my community to help them so they won't have to go through the experiences that I went through.
Well, it's time to lace up your skates and hit the rink at the Forks. Winnipeggers took to the ice at the Forks Canopy Rink for the first skate of the season. Some skaters tell CBC they hope for a colder winter than last year so the ice stays in perfect condition. Bruna Souza was among the first skaters there this weekend, and she skated twice indoors back home in Brazil, but says Winnipeg is nicer.
Much more nicer because it's outdoor and we can see the snow everywhere. It's snowing, so it's really cool.
I love it, man. I've been skating like that since I was a child. It's been with me ever since, so I'm just loving it.
A skate change area is available inside the Forks atrium, and visitors are welcome to bring their own equipment or rent something on site. Coming up after the break, we'll meet a Winnipeg family who's been decking the halls with boughs of holly months before Christmas. Stay with us. Canada's Auditor General says a federal program designed to help small businesses during the pandemic was poorly managed. Karen Hogan says Ottawa gave too much control to a single contractor. Billions of dollars went to ineligible companies, and billions more in loans have not been repaid. CBC's Olivia Stefanovic reports.
It was a program meant to help small businesses get by during COVID-19 lockdowns. But Canada's Auditor General says there was little done to ensure Ottawa got value for money.
I would expect a basic level of due diligence and monitoring of expenditures, regardless of whether a pandemic exists.
The Canada Emergency Business Account, or CEBA for short, distributed almost $50 billion in loans to nearly 1 million small businesses. Most of the money was recovered, but $8.5 billion is outstanding, and an estimated $3.5 billion went to ineligible businesses.
While action on defaulted loans is just beginning. Value for money will be further compromised without better monitoring and improved plans to recover defaulted loans.
Export Development Canada, a Crown corporation, was responsible for delivering CEBA. But the Auditor General found it didn't have the capacity, expertise, or infrastructure to manage this size of a program. So it relied on sole source contracts with a single vendor, a professional services and IT multinational company called Accenture, without strong checks or balances in place.
Isn't it more proof that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the corruption?
Conservatives compare the situation to the ArriveCan controversy, surrounding excessive reliance on contractors to develop a COVID-19 travel app.
Just when you can't get a worse report than ArriveCan, along comes EDC saying, hold my beer.
It's interesting to listen to colleagues who, if you were to take them seriously, we might have all forgotten that COVID even happened.
Liberals are pushing back, calling CEBA a lifeline during the pandemic.
There was an urgency to ensure that small businesses, especially that were taking the CEBA loan, for example, would have delivery of funds as soon as possible.
The Auditor General says she would have expected a program like CEBA to be administered by the public service, not a Crown corporation that is only partially accepting her recommendation for more work to identify all ineligible businesses that receive loans and recover the money they owe the federal government. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
In parts of Ontario, people are shoveling and plowing their way out after a major weekend snowstorm. A key highway connecting the Muskoka region to the Toronto area should fully reopen later today. In the town of Gravenhurst, more than 100 centimeters fell, prompting officials there to declare a state of emergency as they struggle to clear roads from fallen trees and abandoned cars. Crews have been summoned from other regions to help clean up, but work has been hampered by downed trees and blocked roads. The OPP needed to escort crews in some places because of hazardous conditions. Whew, Riley, boy, oh boy, I'm glad we haven't seen that here in Winnipeg, but other parts of the province have been hit pretty hard.
Yes, other parts of the province certainly have had their fair share of snow. Officially at the airport at the end of the month, 1 centimeter of snow on the ground.
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Have a look at this. Here's some of the numbers from the month end versus where we should be at the end of November. So Winnipeg, I mentioned that 1 centimeter on the ground. Usually by the end of November, we should have 6 centimeters on the ground. So we were a little light through Winnipeg and through the Red River Valley. But back to the west, Brandon right on with that 9 centimeter average at the end of the month. Dauphin, though, 26 centimeters on the ground as of the end of November. Usually at this time, you should have 8 centimeters and a pretty healthy snowpack even into northern Manitoba is where we've seen some snow falling. And we'll see more of that as we get into the next day or so here. Your dog walking forecast for Tuesday, maybe a bit white tomorrow and maybe a bit windy. I don't think Raven will mind that, though. Thanks, Judy, for sending this picture. And you can keep sending your pets in the snow to talkback@cbc.ca. So Winds pick up as we get through the night. Tonight we're looking at south winds 20 gusting 40 by the morning. We're looking at -11 first thing in the morning. Our temperature overnight around -14 degrees, jumping up to -6 by the afternoon hours, and temperatures keep going from there into the evening up to -5, so that -6 more like an afternoon temperature rather than a daytime high. And we've got some warmer conditions even than that as we get into the later evening, which I'll talk about in just a moment here. Overnight conditions look like this, mostly cloudy. We'll see the chance of a few flurries overnight tonight through the west, -17 in Brandon, Dauphin -13 overnight. Winnipeg will be right around -13, -14 degrees through the overnight hours tonight, and -14 into northwestern Ontario. That snow has started already into parts of northwestern Manitoba. Expect that to continue, about 10 centimeters coming through the overnight hours tonight. Spreads further east as we get through the evening into the overnight period. So Thompson down to -26, seeing some of that snow as we get into the night tonight, and looking at temperatures around -25, -26 along the Hudson Bay coast as well. Most of the snow through northwestern Manitoba does end as we get toward the lunch hour tomorrow. So by the time we get into the morning, another 2 to 4 centimeters, maybe another 5 centimeters through the day tomorrow. But that does taper off as we get into the afternoon hours. And then the rest of this makes its way south and east as we get through the daytime tomorrow. By 4 o'clock, we're looking at really just back to a mainly cloudy sky, -10 in Flin Flon. -8 through Dauphin, Swan River as we get through the day tomorrow. -9 in Winnipeg by lunchtime. Another 10 centimeters coming through the day tomorrow into northwestern Ontario, and really just periods of snow through the Red River Valley. But behind that, some very windy conditions and temperatures that will really bump up here. So as we get into the later evening hours on Tuesday, look at these temperatures: -1s, -2s through Westman, -3 in Winnipeg. This is at 10 p.m. Look what happens as we get into the overnight period here. By 6 a.m. Wednesday, dropping almost a full 15 degrees in Brandon. So we are looking at temperatures really diving off into Wednesday, and we're looking at much more cooler and closer to seasonal conditions for the rest of the week.
So Riley, it's officially December now. I've popped open the Advent calendar.
Yep.
Have you put up your Christmas decorations at all yet?
Not yet.
Not what?
Soon. It's officially December though, but for a lot of people that means it's time to break out the holiday decorations. Unless, of course, you're Juliet Dayang Hiran Francisco.
The Filipino Winnipegger's home has been ablaze with Christmas lights, decorations, and holiday cheer for several weeks now. Juliet's story is the subject of a new short documentary by students in Sister High School's Create program.
If I can guess my decoration in my Christmas tree, maybe it's around 60 or more than. In the Philippines, we decorate as early as we can in September. When September 1 comes, so we started to decorate. I noticed for 21 years here in Canada, it's big different. Because in the Philippines, we have our culture like it is the world's longest Christmas celebration. There are lots of Filipino community here in Winnipeg, just to remind them not to forget our tradition, our culture in the Philippines, and also to show that this is our culture. So we love our culture wherever we go. The Holy Family, Joseph, Mary, and baby Jesus was born in Bethlehem. I feel very, very great and then full of joy in my heart. Even I came from work, I'm so tired, but if I'm thinking of the decoration, I need to finish this so that I can give good ambience to my community or to my neighborhood. And I asked my nephew to help me. Christmas is love. Because in love, you can give everything. You can share your blessing. You will be reminded of the birth of Christ. And you will be good to people. And you can extend your passion. And love can do everything.
I think Christmas is a time to celebrate, of course, the birth of baby Jesus. And it's just a time to have with your family and just spending that time we have together because I know we are fortunate enough to have family around us, because I know not a lot of people do have that time. We do a lot of big things, so I think it's important for other cultures like to see that and see like for them to learn what we do and what we believe in and like our spirit for it.
Parol is the Tagalog term for star or Star of Bethlehem. So this is the design of the parol made in the Philippines. And I can say that Christmas is so very important for us. So I can advise people, even though it's not Filipino, to join us Filipino to celebrate, because it's the way we can share our blessing for the whole year to other people who need it.
Still ahead, highlights from Saturday's hockey matchup between the city and province, and your last check on weather. Stay with us.
All right, let's have a look at your 7-day forecast. So for Winnipeg, we're looking at periods of snow as we get through the day on Tuesday to the tune of 2 to 4 centimeters north of into the Interlake, more like 5 to 10. And of course, that swath of 10 to 15 through northwestern Ontario and northern Manitoba. We cool off to -14s, -13s, a bit brighter through Wednesday and Thursday. Cloud starts to build in on Friday, and then we have another area of low pressure that'll move through the region as we get through the weekend, but temperatures above seasonal next weekend. The city of Winnipeg beat the province 6-0 in a hockey game to mark the city's 150th birthday.
The game was a throwback to 1974 when Mayor Stephen Juba's City Fathers took on Premier Edward Schreier's Golden Boys to mark the centennial. Here's a look at the action.
It's a great way to celebrate Winnipeg's 150th anniversary. And when Winnipeg turned 100, there was a game between the city of Winnipeg and the province of Manitoba. So it was fun to, reignite that rivalry, that 50-year-old rivalry. You play the game once every 50 years. So it was just a great way to mark Winnipeg 150, celebrate the year, and have fun.
Adult Safe Hockey League. Do you know what that is? That's my hockey background. That's and not the high level either, like the mid to lower tiers of beer league. That's my background. Gillingham used to play junior A. He's top of the scouting report. So again, we're just here to have some fun.
Talking to one another as politicians, we're usually dealing with big issues, so it's nice to be able to come out and just have some fun. We've got a great team. We've got a lot of people that are playing for the city of Winnipeg, and really looking forward to today.
We're the underdogs, right? So, if we even have a respectful showing, I think, that we'll be pretty happy about that.
The city came prepared. I will say that the province had a lot more elected officials. The city, I was really happy to see Mayor Gillingham out there, really happy to see Councillor Chambers. They certainly had a stacked team, but again, it wasn't really about that. It was about having a good time, having fun.
For both of these teams, thank you for coming out today and helping celebrate Winnipeg's 150th anniversary.
There was a little friendly smack talk going on there.
A little bit. I wonder how sore they are.
I know. They kept their elbows to themselves, though, so that was nice to see. It's nice to see them opposite teams, but having a good, friendly, fun time.
Friendly rivalry.
Right?
And we'll do it again in 50 years.
50 years. We'll mark that one on the calendar. Good time to get those holiday decorations up. Yes. Riley, hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
We'll try. Ask you tomorrow.
We'll ask you tomorrow. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
See ya.